Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the show. Today, we're talking about a question that I think everybody's had at some point, which is, you know, what if you wanted to change jobs? Have you ever daydreamed and just thought about what your dream job might be? Maybe you're doing it right now, but for a lot of us, for one reason or another, we got into careers, we got into maybe it was our dream job at the time. And now we're thinking about, hey, maybe I want to do a career pivot. Or maybe you're watching the show and you haven't actually officially kicked off maybe your quote unquote career path yet. And maybe you're in college or maybe you're even a little younger than that. So today's conversation is all about if you were going to pivot, if you were going to change into that dream job, what do you need to know about AI as you go into that? Now, there's some general recommendations we're going to go over today on the show, but also more specific, more tailored, like what's some actual action items you can do, like quite literally during the show while we're showing you that. So we're going to show you some tools you can use that are going to help you out in that journey, but we'll start kind of with the overall. So that's the conversation for today. Today is March 6th, 2025. This is the Day of the AI Show. Thanks for joining us live. We're here every weekday at 10 a.m. Eastern. So even if you're watching us on the replay, but you'd like to join us live and be part of the conversation, you can absolutely do that. We recommend you going over to our YouTube channel to do that. And you can join all the fine folks that are in the live chat right now. With me today, we have Beth, Junmi, Andy, Carl, and I'm Brian. And I think it's going to be a really great conversation, guys, because I think it's really about that idea. Am I hemmed in? And does AI make me feel more hemmed in that I can't leap? Or maybe does AI actually help me because I can? And if I do leap, what new AI skills are going to either propel me forward or perhaps hold me back, right? There's just a lot of questions. Ultimately, people don't move around because they think, well, I've done this job for so many years and I can't move. I sort of famously have moved around through all sorts of jobs, but I also remember like the use case or the example I have from my life is my Aunt Eileen years and years and years ago. She was a high school counselor most of the time through when my cousins were in high school. So she was a counselor at the high school where my cousins were. And then as I remember it as a kid, she was probably 40 or something like that, younger than I am now. And she's like, I want to be a mortician. And I mean, when you think about a career change, go from high school counselor to mortician or, managing funeral home services and stuff like that. And she did. She made the career change and then went on to do that for another 20 plus years and retired in that industry and did very well for herself. But you think about what she had to do back when she was 40. So we're going back 20, 30 years and what you could do now with AI. I just think it's a whole different world, obviously. So that's where my brain was. I was thinking a lot about my Aunt Elaine, who recently passed, and thinking how life would be different today in 2025 if she was sitting in her 40s and going, I don't think I want to be a counselor anymore. I think I want to work in funeral services. You know, like what if that's your dream job, which it was for her, which is, interesting. What do you guys think?
You know what? The one thing that it kept is on my mind more and more and more and more today, is yesterday, we met with, like, a group of CEOs, um, in Calgary, and the one thing that really stuck out was when I was talking about the call for startups from Y Combinator, and I don't know if anyone has saw what they were calling out for in the spring 2025 startups, right? It's a good chunk is AI, but the two that really stuck out were vertical AI agents and B2A software where the customers will all be agents. So if anyone who doesn't know, Y Combinator is one of the biggest or well-known incubator, like startup incubators, you would argue in the world. So, and some of the most well-known tech companies have come out of there, and those two are a big one, and it just got me more thinking, it isn't just understanding how to use AI, but it's also like, "Hey, could I learn how to deploy, manage, create, maintain agents?" Agents that either do the work or agents that manage other agents to do the work, right? And I don't know if we can play a small clip of what that is because I thought that was a really, really neat thing that they kind of showed.
Yeah, I see. I mean, I see what you're saying on that, Carl. And I guess my question back to you would be for like today, if you're looking at people or you're let's say somebody came to you for career advice, right? Family member, friend, whatever. And you have this knowledge about what you saw with Y Combinator. And what, by the way, didn't Sam like manage that for a while? Sam
Yeah.
Altman managed. Yeah, that's what I thought. He's not the only one, but yeah, I remember hearing that about him. Um, but if you're going to give like sort of career advice, knowing that there is, not that it's the typically the show topic today, but knowing that there's this maybe B to A play in there, how does that impact or influence what you might give advice to somebody who you don't have to use the high school counselor when I did any job change where somebody's trying to make a leap. Does does that influence how you give them advice if you were to do so?
Well, I do already get that question from mostly from the the presidents or CEOs asking, "Hey, could you talk to my son, daughter, and give them, just have a full." Some of them ask, like, "Hey, could you just get on a call with them and just talk about AI? Because I'm really concerned about what their future is. Because we're talking about, like, the there is a gap when you start looking at, oh, if, let's say, law, you need to become a junior lawyer or, right out of, law school, you an accountant too, like any professional service. How do you learn to become a more mid-level or senior accountant or lawyer when you have those senior lawyers now using AI to do the work of said junior, what would have been junior AI, I mean, junior lawyers or professionals, right? So that's
Mhm.
the question. And that's the big question that people are thinking. I was like, wait a minute, y- you have to gain experience to become that. But if AI takes that away, and even the jobs of um like fast food, like, where are even the jobs that you just gain experience in the workforce in general when you graduate or in high school? If those are now being taken over by AI, how do you get that getting into the workforce experience? So this is where I'm like, you know what? You've gotta start thinking about that kind of possibility. So use the tools, but this is where I'm like, you gotta have to start thinking pretty smart. Where are people calling out, like Y Combinator? If they're calling for these startups, then these startups are gonna go after the established companies. Any vertical software as a service now is looking to get disrupted. Like they're literally calling for disruption. Vertical AI agents, B2A software. We know the tools like Lovable and so on to start building your own stuff. So I would that's where kind of I would start looking at. I would start showing them things like this and I'd be like, "Hey, you've got to be a little bit critical thinking about, the career path that you're really thinking about." Am I saying don't go into computer science to become a software? No, I'm not saying that. But you have to understand. And even some of the lawyers that I know, I play football with and so on, they're like, yeah, I would really discourage people from joining, becoming a barrister or non-trial lawyer because they can see it. They're like, that is a very, very precarious situation. So there's a lot of different things that you have to start thinking about, and I'm more thinking about like, "Hey, what are you looking at as a career path, and where do you wanna go?" I'm kind of focused on that kind of aspect of one's life, not the sort of mid-life or mid-career transition.
And they're both valid, right? They're both part of the conversation today. There's obviously tons and tons and tons of new people entering the workforce every month, every day, every year, coming out of whether they took a traditional route, maybe less traditional these days, but a college route, or maybe they went into the trades or whatever the case may be. And then obviously you have the people who are dissatisfied for one reason or another. Maybe they have to go to an office every single day, and they simply their goal is to work remotely because they want to travel more. Maybe their kids are older. Something my wife and I talk about all the time. I work remotely, but my wife doesn't. In fact, yesterday she told me she already goes to the office, but she told me as of March 31st, this is in the state of Florida, that all federal employees, she works for the state, have to return to work full time. They're getting rid of all like flex remote work, which is a trend we're seeing across at least the United States. She doesn't do that, so she already goes to the office, loves going to the office. But when my daughter gets a little bit older and is quote unquote out of the house, my wife and I both see a future where we work remotely from other countries, ideally. And we're able to travel around and more and stuff like that. And so that's a long-term career path. Well, more for her, but it's that transition, right? So if that's her, if that's my wife, and that's something she wants to do not today, but maybe in 5, 6 years, then I see what you're saying, Carl. Like, it doesn't hurt for either side, for career change or brand new going into, trying to figure out what you want to do with your life, to understand how maybe this idea of AI agents as we understand it today, some future technology is going to deeply impact that particular area. And the answer maybe it doesn't. Maybe they don't see a clear indicator where there's going to be a huge disruption from these startups that are doing business to agent or something like that, and they don't see it as a limiting factor. Or maybe to your point, their dream is to be a lawyer, and I agree with you. You're not saying don't be a lawyer, but be aware of what your future office looks like as a lawyer. What does your future career look like as a lawyer? And you might want to make adjustments today to be more prepared for that, or to be the best at what you do because you have these generalized AI skills, or maybe you have even more honed in law AI skills. And coming in the door with those is perhaps going to give you a competitive edge. Okay.
So
Beth, yeah.
I just
What
yeah,
well,
I just wanna
go for it.
I just wanna jump on and acknowledge that the jobs numbers came out. And so people are not just choosing that this is something that a time when they want to switch careers. This may be increasingly that choice being made for them. And so this is also a show acknowledging that
Oh,
and wanting to give some information for folks. This
yeah.
is a horrible time to lose your job, but it is an excellent time to pivot into AI.
Well, pivot into AI or pivot into a new role using AI.
Yes. And I think that is pivoting into AI. Actually, I'm glad that you rephrased it because what I think is the majority of the opportunities out there is someone who has specialized knowledge or or a position like deep experience in a position who can also speak to how AI is going to influence that, expand your ability to do more in it, those kinds of things. Our co-host Aaron just got a new job, and in that interview process was directly asked about agents and bots, right? So
Mhm.
it's yeah. So having that knowledge in the context of everything that you've done or want to do is helpful, and you are very likely even now distinguishing yourself from the vast majority of people.
When I think back to the jobs that I took post business school, and I developed over years an understanding of what the business processes were, what the objectives were from the sort of the corporate overall, mission, and how to guide employees with, what are the next steps, what has to be done by what point in the cycle of the calendar that proceeds over years. All of that knowledge now is contained in AI. And that's kind of a bold statement, I think. But I would say that today, that let's say 2 years it took me to get to the point where I was really, really back of the hand, fully understanding exactly what had to happen in that organization. Now, if I took that job today, I would be able to consult with a number of deep research capable AIs that would give me the roadmap for exactly how that's done. Not only just, in general, what that function or department has to do, but specific to that industry. And I could then start to ask questions about, okay, what are some of the strategic imperatives for this position in that job? And I would go into the job with a heck of a lot more framework and understanding. And I think that's one of the key skills that you have to have now is not to wing it and go in with the idea that, you're going to learn OJT, on the job training, but instead you're going to familiarize yourself with everything about a company and the role and the function in that company at the state of the art right now as understood by the most comprehensive frontier models.
Uh, yeah, I think I was watching what you're just saying, Andy, was making me think about I was watching an interview, I think, with actors who I know what it was. I was watching Netflix, and Netflix has, like, really shortened clips from the latest week of Graham Norton shows. Anybody in the UK would know who Graham Norton is. I think a lot of people in the US do too. Very, very famous TV interview host, and been doing it for decades. And I always loved his show, like the British humor and stuff like that. And so anyway, two of the actresses on the couch were comparing against being prepared to go out on to do a play. And I think one of the gentlemen was talking about doing like something really serious like Othello, but then somebody else was in a different play or whatever. Anyway, they were having discussion about it, about the nerves and stuff like that of going out there on the play. And to your point, like still to this day, probably right now, the only way to really maybe work through the nerves is probably to get, just like us doing this show, probably to get 100 shows under your belt. Maybe not that many, maybe it's 20, to work out the nerves, work out the pacing, right? Where I stand, blocking. Beth, you could talk a lot better than this because you're on stages way more than me. And what you do with improv, but I imagine it takes some time. And in the future, I don't know, it's gonna be some holodeck thing, but like we're even seeing this in sales now, where you can do role playing close, not the same, but close right now. And there's some other AI specific SaaS products that are out there for role playing and sales that are making it closer and closer and closer. And then yesterday, I was demonstrating Hume, but then you were talking about Sesame. Then I think you said Sesame yesterday, Andy, and it was like open Sesame because then I saw 19 things on TikTok about Sesame. I'd never heard the term before that. So it was like you said it and it was everywhere. But that's another voice activation model. And they're getting better and better at this natural conversation, which means that people can practice more in a digital environment, call it a digital twin, call it role playing, call it being able to be on a virtual stage, maybe in like AI and sort of an augmented reality where somebody could put on a headset, walk onto a blank stage with no audience and see their cast members on stage and block and practice and block and practice and do that at 3 a.m. in the morning if that's when they wanted to do it and it doesn't harm anybody else. Like that's where I see a huge impact. Kind of like what I hear you saying, Andy, is like you can have no experience, but with AI, there's a lot of innovative ways just today with just using what we have. Never mind virtual reality, artificial and reality or anything like that. Just what we have today, there's a lot of ways for you to practice in a new industry or dream job that you don't have yet, which is really, really impactful. You can sit at your computer and technically practice.
There's also a danger, I think that it could be possible that there will be people who will come into an organization having said all the right things, but not really having any deep foundation of understanding of what they were saying. So you could end up a company could end up hiring somebody who is well prepared because of the advent of AI, and yet didn't have the fundamental skills. Maybe something as simple as deeply critical thinking, and how you test for that in the interview process and elsewhere is the same as it's always been. Like, what prior experiences or credentials does this person own that show that they have the ability to adapt and modify the exposure to new information that they've gained and translate that into something that's repeatable and useful for our organization? I want to just jump over to one other quick point, which is, you know, in any move you decide to make at this point, you need to go in equipped with a full understanding of what the state of the art tools are for that particular function within a company. And there's great AI tools to help you find that. There's one that's called There's an AI for that. Now, somebody thought about putting that thing up there, and I haven't looked at that recently, because we do every day of the weekdays. We talk about all these tools and all of these capabilities, but we don't drill all the way down into a specific business function, a department within a business, and say, okay, what are the tools that are really getting traction in this area? But when you go into a new position, you need to understand and keep abreast of where the state of the art is for automation and or human support, let's call it human decision support for that particular role.
So, there's a custom GPT created by Paul Raitzer called Jobs GPT. It's by Smarter X is the company, and it actually takes your position that you put in, your job that you want, your job that you're in, and returns the assessment of how exposed it is based on the tasks that are associated with that job.
Hmm.
So, that is actually a really good resource for people who are looking for what you're saying, Andy, like what is state of the art, but by a task breakdown, right? How exposed the current AI is, how exposed those tasks are to the capabilities of the current AI.
And that's an area, Beth, well, go ahead, Carl, and then I'll add in my point. Go ahead.
No, Brian, I think just continue that thought because I was just gonna move on to something a little bit different,
Okay.
kind of. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I was just going to continue on what you were saying, Beth, because that's exactly where my brain was as I was preparing for the show today, and I was looking at our show notes that Beth you always put together for us. I was thinking, man, I want to provide some like clear outline or action steps to somebody who might be listening to this. Because good call out, Beth. There are certainly a lot of people, certainly if you work for the federal government in the U.S., who are, despite maybe not wanting to, they're now looking for new jobs. And maybe they're thinking to themselves, this is a perfect time for me to pivot out of what I was doing, because now here I am. And so using a GPT, fantastic. Use the tools you have, and that's what I was going to get at. Is you can use AI tools that we have access to right now for free that you can use because clearly, if you're out of a job, for sure, money's tight. I'm sure, depending on what you have saved up, you need all the help you can get. Where would I start with this? Absolutely, I would start with deep research in Perplexity. And what I would do is I want to put on my research cap, especially now. It could just be me having a gainfully employed job but wanting to get my dream job. I could be out of work, or I could just be, more to your point, Carl, maybe younger and entering the workforce and trying to figure this out. Any of these apply because you can use up to 5 deep researches a day for free on Perplexity right now. And that's unmatched, in my opinion, for what you get out of it. Go test it yourself and let me know. But it's unmatched on the quality of the information. 5 a day over 5 days, that's 25 deep researches you come. I guarantee you in 5 days, you'd be a whole hell of a lot smarter on how you want to approach this. So I start putting on my research cap and my outline cap, and I go, well, how am I going to work through this problem? Well, this is perfect, right? Because this fits right in with what AI does really well, which is to say, define the objective. Start with the end goal in mind. What do I want to be? Okay, I I am a teacher because, by the way, there are literally millions of teachers who are looking to career pivot because they're just beaten down. Nurses, I'd say the same thing about. I've worked with extensively with those two areas, and there's a lot of career pivoting because of burnout and a lot of other reasons. Um, you're a teacher and now you want to move into something else. First thing I would be doing is using deep research on Perplexity. Step one, and I'd be saying, like, what are the AI applications in my my dream job career field or wherever I think I want to go in 2025. I put that parameter on it because what I want to get back from a deep research over, 30, 40 references, cited references, which I can then go read on my own and stuff. So even after you do that one deep research, you now have links to 25 or 30 other news, blog, article that you can go deep dive into. And you may find a ton in that new industry that's super, super helpful to you. So I would do that first. And I would have a really good understanding. Maybe I refine my search. Maybe I do a follow up on Perplexity. But I'd really want to know, how is AI impacting this place that I want to be or that I think I want to be, lawyer, whatever it is. Then what I would want to do is like a phase 2 for me is I would really want to get into another tool you can use for free, LinkedIn. And I would be searching for jobs, but I wouldn't be necessarily like, what can I apply for today? I'd be like, okay, if that's my maybe 2-step away process, maybe there's an in-between job that happens sometimes where you're like, my dream job is probably 5 years away. I'm probably going to have to work this other job or the same job between now and then for me to maybe get where I want. I need a roadmap to it. So I would start looking at current job opportunities that you may not qualify for today, but they're going to start uncovering the AI, requirements, tools that they're using. You're going to start seeing in the bullet points, preferred knowledge in, it'll be some software you've never heard of before. I was just working with the company Seismic, not working with them, but Seismic was a company I was thinking about yesterday. I need to know Seismic to do that. The hell Seismic? Oh, it's a learning management. Okay. Could I go learn that on my own or the YouTube videos? So you can start. My point is we could go on and on because there's like several steps to this, but I would absolutely use the free tools. There's 2 right there: LinkedIn, searching through jobs, and Perplexity as much as you possibly can and lean on the deep research. And of course, use the other free versions of that as well. And I would be diving deep into this future you version and really trying to uncover, what are they doing? What is Perplexity projecting they're going to do in that area? And how do I meet those two in the middle to be most prepared? So when I do show up, yeah, to your point, Andy, I can't replace time and grade. I can't replace being in the room, in the conference room and learning. And I have, God knows, I know I've gone through my fair share of, you know, F ups in those areas where I was not prepared for what I was sitting in or being part of. And I just had to learn by doing and being there. And you just have to take the hits. But I can be a lot more prepared going towards it, knowing where the industry is going. So anyway, back to you, Carl, on that. But that's where my brain is. Like, if I'm going to do something today, anybody is listening to this, please start there. You're going to get a lot of value out of it. It's not going to be time wasted to try to get prepared for it.
Okay. What I wanted to just put into the conversation was that yesterday there's some mention that OpenAI plans to charge 2,000, 10,000, 20,000 for specialized AI agents, right? So 2,000 a month for like a knowledge worker, 10,000 for a software development agent, and then 20,000 for PhD level research. Some people are like, oh, why would you pay for that? I'm like, why wouldn't you pay for that? If you're a company that can get a software developer agent for 10,000 a month, no benefits, no nothing, just you can work that agent 12, 24, 48 hours straight, no, like nothing, just keep going. Same thing with a $2,000 knowledge worker agent. Same thing with a 20,000 per month tier PhD level research agent.
Mhm.
That's that's a bargain for versus a salary. So this is why I think, just tying back to what we talked about in the beginning, it's like, hey, are you able to manage this agent? Are you able to deploy, create, like, a company's not just going to buy a $2,000 a month agent and not know what to do with it. First of all, it has to be good, has to be doing what it's supposed to be doing. So you don't, this all hinges on this agent that actually can do stuff. So I would suspect they think that it could do some really good things. I'm not sure. And usually when OpenAI moves, a lot of everyone else kind of follows in that direction. So what does that look like too? So as a company, you have to, like, I've been in too many CEO and president meetings that they're thinking about this. Yes, thinking about empowering the workforce, but you it's there. How do I reduce? How do I become more efficient? How to become more productive? So you have to keep this in mind, or think about professions that don't touch this, or are not adjacent to, or maybe trades profession that like it's very difficult to to automate or do or have a $2,000 a month agent. So it's important to just I wanted to bring that up.
Let me add to that. I think we're in a period of time during which the skill of managing agents, and you've talked about this in the context of Operator, Carl, and you've demonstrated to us how Operator, the browser-based agent that OpenAI has produced, and now there are others out there. Operator is available now, including now this tool that we talked about last week. We did a full show on N8N. Now has an agent node built into their workflow automation process, which has the ability to reason and select tools and do other steps that used to take a whole lot of thinking and deliberation to deliver in a tool like Zapier or Make or otherwise. So now you have a little agent built right into the workflow automation thing. It's going to accelerate the ability to automate business processes by just adding that one agentic feature. So you will be very useful over the next 5 years to the degree that you have the ability to understand which agents to apply, how to apply them, and then how to manage them while they're operating, because they do run into roadblocks and require a human to either approve or intervene. And that's how Operator works. That's how other agents will work. It's not going to be fire and forget missile. I gave you the objective and I never have to talk to you again. So agents, 2025 is the year of the agent, as far as I'm concerned. We're really making amazing progress with that in AI. Not we, but somebody else is making that progress. And I'm seeing this emergent agent ecosystem. And there will be great value in the humans who understand how to operate in that ecosystem, working with agents. So, and by the way, that going back to the starting point that Carl brought forward with respect to Y Combinator, they're talking about in the context of business, um, you know, a business instrumenting their business in order to talk to agents out there in the world that are working. Now, people have to design and manage those processes. And that's an area of expertise that I think is going to be useful for many years to come, not just, for a short period of time until AI replaces everybody.
But it seems like that kind of thing would almost be easier because the selling to an agent that was I mean, all of the AI right now, I'm gonna say all of the AI right now in the English that comes out of an English speaking tradition, world, culture, whatever, was trained in part on all of the same data that was available on the internet, right? Like several months ago, perhaps in the first year, we did a show about how I don't even remember how many, but there were a series of books that had been digitized and made available. It was not open source. The authors in the books did not allow that to happen, but it had happened, and it turned out that a bunch of the new AIs, GPT-1, GPT-2, GPT-3, like those kind, had all been trained on that core material because it was available. And when you have sort of that same common, source, when you add more to it, you've created a similarity across the board that you don't have when you are selling to humans or engaging with humans. You have some of that, but we by the nature of how we're created and raised, have more diversity, distinction between us. So I wonder if the selling to AI agents isn't going to be a little easier. I'm not sure that's a good thing, but it sounds like there's fewer variables in that process of trying to meet a need than there is in a process of trying to meet a need of a human, I think. Junmi,
Well,
I see you have thinking face.
Uh, no, I was just contemplating what the eventual result of that if we as things progress, um, and seeing if what our place becomes into it. Because I've heard people, they've talked about, oh, AI will take over everything, and we've talked about, business to agent modeling and what people can do to, develop their skills or their AI literacy to get to their dream job. Are we also how far out, I guess, would be my question, and that's the kind of thing I'm thinking out right now is how far out is this preparation going to be valid? How far out before we with all of these agents doing all of the, we'll say, heavy lifting, how far out until we're working for the agents, right? Like Andy, like you mentioned that you still need a person in there to answer the agent's questions or fix an agent's problem. So where that's maintaining that agent. And of course there's always the side of like building the new tech and that kind of thing. So how far are out, or what do we see as the timeline where it's learn AI so that you can land that dream job, become experienced in that dream job enough so where you're the curator, maintainer um, of that job, so you have that experience, so that you can then train the new generation of maintenance personnel to maintain the AIs that are actually doing the quote unquote work. And that's kind of where my mind is right now is what is the actual progression there?
and we're back. Don't know where we went, but we're back. Can everybody hear us? Oh no, stay with us, Beth. I think you're the key.
Just
Yeah,
just seeing if everybody was paying attention. Sorry.
yeah. No, I'm totally came back, and I was like, and that's our show. No,
Yeah, I
yes,
think Jimmy really captured well that there's a ramp to an eventual state out there, and he described it very well. So picking up from that, the question is, what can you do now, in order to be prepared to avoid being disintermediated in your current position and/or, to be in demand for the next positions as this progression happens. And it's not like this is going to happen in the next couple of months. You have time, and AI is going to assist you in getting prepared for it. So, um, there, just to kind of regate our momentum
yeah.
from Jimmy's very excellent summarization of what's happening in the world right
Yeah, and like I was talking about this internally and externally. So I was talking with clients and also with the scale team yesterday because we're always building and thinking about new, ways that we can make our business more efficient. And the nice part about that is you can make your business more efficient and then productize that and turn that around, right? So there's it's like you get bonus for it. Um, but what I always remind my coworkers who are just now starting to build their own custom GPTs, and instead of it being like, is this a thing? What I'm getting more, which is really exciting, is I built this custom GPT. Can you look at it? It's not quite doing what I want. Right. And that's a big leap from a year ago. I mean, I'm on this show. I preach about AI all the time. It's hard. Carl's talked about it too. It's hard to get people to change their habits and do things. But I definitely see not only a huge difference internally where we've been championing AI and obviously in sales for a long time, but externally with companies. We have more incoming potential opportunities than we have ever had that are all asking about AI. And it's nice and it's rewarding because it's been a grind up until this point. My point to this is I say the same thing to everybody. Hey, you're not, back to Jimmy's question, you're not going to go wrong by getting in there and using the general AI tools that you have now. You may need to your point, Jimmy, need to learn some specialized software. Well, that's no different than anybody who needed to be an Excel wizard back in the day, right? Or name, whatever it is, Outlook or something like that. You had to know your stuff for your job, and you really know it better than the vast majority of people. And that's always going to be the case, whether it's managing AI agents, managing super niche AI agents within an industry. There's a lot of like nuance in there for what your job may end up being.
Yeah, let me just quickly point out that on resumes, you would often see at the bottom a list of the tools that they had practical experience with, including Excel, Word, and so on back then. Now, I'm curious to know whether if you collected 100 resumes, how many of them are actually saying, I'm proficient with X, Y, and Z that are the tools that many of us, even in on this show and in the audience for a specific industry, haven't even heard of before.
Oh yeah, for 100% of that. I thought you were going to see like saying they're proficient with like ChatGPT because you do see that. In fact, I've been part of a interview process with Scaled as we're bringing in more people, and we have run into that where people say, "Oh, I use ChatGPT," but to your point earlier, Andy, when how you test against that in interviews, and it quickly falls apart because saying you use ChatGPT and being proficient on how to write out prompting and get the results that you want and being able to explain like a portfolio of different ways that you did that. A huge gap there because we're seeing it literally just in Scaled and people who are interviewing stuff like that where they don't really have those expertise. They can't, the minute you go beyond, well, how did you use ChatGPT? Walk me through the process of how you would break this down and give it to ChatGPT as a prompt to get the result that you would need. Here's a hypothetical. Breaks down almost immediately. And it really gives us a divide of who's aware of the tool and using it like they're aware of a calculator on their desktop and who's actually using it to move the ball forward. So I think that's part of it. And yes, Jimmy, like you can only prepare so much, especially if you're entering college today, to assume that you would know where life will be in 5 years with AI. It's crazy. But we would both agree there's just a ton you can do today to work yourself towards that with the general AI skills that are going to make you the best candidate for these futuristic agents and stuff like that, because you're going to have the best understanding of how the entire system works.
Yeah, and I want to use the word practice. You have to have a daily practice of using AI tools. Pick one and start practicing with it. I'll give you an anecdotal analogy. Back in the day, data entry to the earliest forms of personal computing was a very important step. You had to get the data into the spreadsheet, which is basically all that was available on a computer on the original. Like I had a compact portable.
Mhm.
People don't even probably remember the company Compact with a Q at
Oh
the
yeah.
end.
Yeah.
Uh,
Where the keyboard locked in and was the handle.
That's right, and I carried that on a plane. It would fit under your seat, but it
Yeah.
weighed like 40 pounds or
Yeah.
something. Anyway, so I was like one of the first people, moving around and doing work with a personal computer.
Mhm.
And we're talking about 1983, 1982, 1983. That's when this was. But 10 key calculator or 10 key input pad skills were really important to get the numbers into the spreadsheet. There was no way to, download data.
Right.
You had to type them into the computer. And so if someone told me they had 10 key calculator skills or, one person might be able to do a hunt and peck kind of thing
Right.
on a team thing, but where you had to be in order to be really proficient with that was you had to not look ever down at the 10 key pad,
Right.
but instead just be able to read from the document and be putting in the numbers and manipulating the position of the cursor that moves from cell to cell. So you have to develop through practice experience with how to be fast and efficient with AI in the same way, but now instead of having to use a 10 key input, you're potentially speaking to the AI at least, or at least typing in interactively with the AI the refinements of what you're asking the AI to do in order to get to a result. And I think a good interview process would be to have a challenging task that could be simply solved by interacting with Claude or ChatGPT
Exactly.
or Grok or
Yep.
Perplexity or whichever one you want to pick. But then watch as that person actually interacts with the AI to
Yeah.
demonstrate that they have actually practiced to the point that they know how to surmount certain obstacles that happen naturally in the dialogue with an AI.
I love that. I think you're 100% right, and that's exactly what should be happening because that's how you distinguish what people, like I said, who are saying on the resumes they have a skill, but they don't. They have knowledge and awareness of a tool. They don't have a skill set, and there's a giant difference there. And you might even go as far to say like, well, you may have a skill set, but you can't do it in our industry. You don't have the skill set like in this niche or whatever. One thing I want to just bring up before we start wrapping things up, and I mean, if anybody else has it, but this goes way back to earlier in the conversation. Carl was bringing up, blue collar jobs. So let's just define that as like your goal, your job or your dream job is to be a plumber. And I know some people might scoff at that, but I've known many kids, I'll call them kids that were like teenagers or whatever, that was their goal, not just to be a plumber. They wanted to have their own business. They really were an entrepreneur, and whether they were calling themselves that or not, that was the goal. I want to gain this skill set that's very difficult to do and become, I can't think of the term for it, but in electrical. But anyway, a journeyman. You might be a journeyman, which takes several years in training and things like that to get signed off as that. But what I would say to anybody who might be listening on the job or wants to do, because there's plenty of people in corporate who go, I would love to be a plumber right now. Maybe not in all the attics and stuff like that, but I'd love to be. I would be a plumber. I love that. I love tinkering. I would be an electrician. That's where I want to pivot to. And what I would say is like it really doesn't change really how you can approach this with AI. Yes, Carr was pointing out that do we see robots taking over household or commercial plumbing jobs? No, at least right now we don't. We just talked about robots. We'll see where that goes. But no, you're probably buffered safe. What I would say though is, dude, go learn this AI, understand how these agents are going to work and help you. Figure out how that can help you propel your small business faster. I know for a fact that a lot of people would love the work, but they're on the job a lot of times, and it just doesn't make sense for them to pick up their phone and take that next customer call to then try to figure out mentally what days they have available to do a job. And that's what ends up ultimately letting the customer feel let down, or they didn't show up when they said they were, because they're trying to do 10 things at once while actually being some hot addict, putting two pipes together with PVC or whatever. So think about the AI tools that are coming, that are available today. Use Perplexity and think about that and say like, well, I want to be a plumber. I want to own my own business in 5 years. What are some of the AI tools I could start thinking about getting knowledge on and working with today that's going to help me make my business unstoppable? That's going to take care of the calendar problem. That's going to field all my calls for me without me having to hire one extra person. You can be a team of one. We know this. You could be an entrepreneur one and have your own business and having several AI agents that are managing all the other parts that you don't want to mess with. You just want to do the customer interaction and help people out or whatever. So even if your goal is to pivot into something that doesn't seem like, oh, AI could, I'm not going to be typing on a keyboard per se, more than likely you're still going to be impacted drastically by the AI tools that are out there. So you could still do yourself a great service by figuring that out now, getting comfortable with these tools. So you always know. And by the way, it's going to protect you from people who are trying to sell you, gold, right? Because there's going to be people coming to your door that are going to say, I have the perfect AI solution for your small business and so on and so forth. And having just enough knowledge to know what's real and what can't be done and what's a real solution and what's not could also be, who knows how many thousands of dollars that could save you, but it could also set you up for great success because what other plumbers are currently doing this right now? I would guess very, very little. So it's a huge differentiator that you could use to come right out of the gate and be a brand new plumber and probably be very, very competitive in your small market, I would think. And that's one example, obviously, but just wanted to put that out there. Don't want anybody to think like we're not thinking about AI in the traditional blue collar, because there's all sorts of ways that you could deploy AI to your benefit today. All right. Any other thoughts? Wrap ups? Anything?
I'll just give you a little sound bite. You need AI fluency. You need to know what you're talking about for any job going forward. And you need AI currency. And what I mean by that is you need to know what happened in the last month that impacts the things you understand already and what the new tools and approaches are. So fluency plus currency, and you'll be prepared for any job.
And that's a great reason.
To that is 2 soft skills. We've mentioned it before: critical thinking and a lifelong learning mindset. You're going to be learning forever. It isn't oh, I'll just learn this for 6 months and I'll be ready to go. It'll be every day for the rest of your life. And remember, analyze any information that's coming in. Be aware that you have to verify. I leave it at
And that's a great reason to continue watching the Daily AI Show and being a part of our audience and our community. We also want to mention that we are doing another sci-fi AI show live tomorrow afternoon. We did a show about robots on Tuesday this week on the Daily AI Show, and we're doing a show about robots on the Sci-Fi AI Show, looking at it from the sci-fi lens. Thanks.
And I just want to be clear that that's when you say tomorrow, just in case people are watching this on a different day,
Oh, Friday.
that would
Friday.
be March 7th is the day she's talking about. And is that 1 p.m. Eastern? What time is that?
No, 1 p.m. Pacific.
1
1
p.m.
p.m.
Pacific.
Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern.
Got it. On March 7th, they're doing the next Sci-Fi HI. So come back and hang out with them for that. Okay, that's it for today, guys. We'll be back tomorrow with our 2-week recap. Thanks for hanging out today and all the great comments as usual. And we will see you again tomorrow.
Aloha.